In this video, I'm going to show you how to use shimmering metallic blends, surface printing techniques, and layering to make a big and bold abstract clay pendant. Hi, I'm Mihaela from Learn Polymer Clay, and let's dive in. I started by properly conditioning the polymer clay. I'm working with gold, true magenta, true yellow, true blue, and some black for contrast. So I then mixed equal parts of gold with each color except for the black. And thus I had rich shimmering versions of metallic pink, metallic green, and metallic yellow to work with. Next, I used Cindy Lietz teardrop skinner blend technique to make smooth gradients from solid colors to their metallic versions, and I rolled the sheet through the pasta machine about 10-15 times. I rolled 2 teardrop beads, from instance one of true yellow and the other of the metallic clay resulting from the mix. I used my fingers to flatten the beads and press them together. I put the flattened clay through the pasta machine on the largest setting, and then I put it several times through the pasta machine, 10-15 times, keeping one color on the right and the other color on the left, and folding it all the time. I went down until the setting number 4, and I did this until I ended with a beautiful color gradient. Of course, I did this for the blue and green metallic clays, and I finished by making a beautiful skinner blend for the yellow and the metallic yellow. Now it's time to make the surface imprints, and I'm going to use black acrylic paint and the tracing wheel to make a beautiful imprint on the blue and metallic green sheet of clay, and you'll just have to load the tracing wheel with black acrylic paint and gently draw dotted lines on top of the clay. Then I used the wavy blade and a little bit of black acrylic paint to create an interesting imprint on top of the clay. You'll just have to load the wavy blade with some acrylic paint, black acrylic paint, and gently press it into the clay, but you don't want to do this too hard. You don't want to cut the clay, only create a beautiful pattern on top of it. And for the magenta and the metallic pink sheet of clay, I used a beautiful border cutter that I've got from Create Along, and I received this border cutter when I was a member of their design team. And for the third sheet of polymer clay, I used the rigid blade, and I've made diagonal lines in one direction and then in the opposite direction. Of course, I'm not pressing too hard on the blade because I don't want to cut the clay. I just want to make a surface imprint, and you'll just have to use baby wipes to clean the tools immediately. Then you'll just have to use an interesting cutter. I'm using Create Along border cutter to slice out wavy strips of clay. I did this for the 3 clay sheets with the acrylic printing designs, and then I just used the same border cutter to cut black strips of clay, wavy strips of black clay. I'm going to use another sheet of black clay passed through the setting number 4. So by using the tracing wheel, I created a pattern on top of the surface, and then I flipped the clay because this is going to be the back of the bead, and I used a large round cutter to cut out a round element, and I also used the tracing wheel to create a pattern on top of the wavy strips of black clay. And then you just have to assemble these cutout elements on top of the round cutout piece, and we are assembling the pieces of a puzzle together. Try not to leave gaps between the elements, and then you just have to use parchment paper to press everything together. And in case you notice that the pattern on top of the black wavy strips disappeared, you can use again the tracing wheel and trace the pattern. I used again the large round element to cut out the round design, and when I flipped the piece I noticed that there was some colored clay showing on the back, so I had to use a flexible blade and trim off more clay. And then you just have to use your tools or your fingers to smooth off the margin. And then I just used a smaller round camper cutter to cut out an opening in the middle of the bead. Now I wrapped the metallic domed baking cup in paper and I put the piece on top. Then I decided that the black strips were kind of overpowering, so I thought it would be better to put some colored elements on top, and so I put the clay, the colored gradients through the pasta machine on the setting number 6, and I used the same border cutter to cut out tiny elements, and I put some blue and metallic green elements on this black strip on the right, and I just applied a thin strip of the magenta and pinkish metallic clay on the left, and you'll just have to use parchment paper and gently press everything together. Then I prepared some clay, black clay, passed on the setting number 4. Then I wrapped the clay around the skewer and we're going to make a tube bead. I neatly cut the ends using the rigid blade, and because we have a clay bead with an opening in the middle, we cannot put a longer tube bead, so it's best to cut this tube bead in half and position one smaller tube bead above the cutout area in the center of the bead and the other below this cutout area. And then you just have to use the skewer to gently press these tube beads into the base, into the back of the larger bead. And then I put this bead on a domed metal cup wrapped in paper, because I don't want to have a glass-like look on the back of the beads, because we are making the back and the front of the bead in the same time. For the smaller beads, it looks that I forgot to press record when making them, but here's what I did. I used a smaller round cutter and a sheet of black clay passed on the setting number 4. I also used a tiny cutout from the printed colorful metallic blends on top, and I placed the cutter, a smaller round cutter, over the clay. I gently push the clay outwards with my fingers before pressing the cutter down and rotating it left and right, and trimming off the excess. And of course, gloves are recommended for this part of the process, and you'll have to be careful where you place the cutout colorful elements if you want the element to be on the inside part of the curved bead or on the outside of the curved bead. You have to play with this a little bit. Then you'll just have to bake the pieces for 45 minutes in the preheated oven. I usually use an aluminum disposable lid to protect them from direct heat. You'll just have to let the clay cool down. And then I used some cloth to apply Renaissance wax on top to protect the acrylic paint printed patterns. I let it dry for 1 minute, And then I used the other side of the cloth to burnish the piece for a subtle shine. I used the hand drilling tool to poke a hole in the small round bead with a greenish element. I poked 2 holes in the small round bead with the pinkish magenta cutout element, and we are going to use the 2 beads from the third larger bead to assemble a beautiful big and bold abstract pendant. In order to do so, I used 20 gauge silver colored jewelry wire, and I also used 25 gauge black wire to attach the smaller beads to the attaching system. I finished by hammering the ends of the wire, and I also sanded these ends to make sure that your skin won't be hurt when wearing the pendant. I'd love to hear what you think. Do you like working with metallic clays? If you like this pendant, here's what to watch next.